and I got in my car, and I remember thinking, man, my words don't matter. All the jokes I made, talking about the concessions, like none of that mattered. The game's over. I remember thinking, man, I want to talk about something that matters. And what matters more than our salvation? And so in that moment, I was like, I want to go in a radio ministry.
Hey guys, and aloha. It's Mark Sawyer Chu.
And AJ Ellerington.
Together we'll be hosting the Christian Surfers Podcast,
where we talk Jesus
and talk with surfers that love Jesus.
Tune in to hear some amazing stories.
Hi, and welcome to this Talk Story podcast here at Christian Surfers. Today I'm joined by Colbi. I had the pleasure of meeting Colbi a few days ago, and she is an amazing person, and I can't wait to tap a bit into her story. So, Colbi, tell me about yourself, where you're from, how old you are, what you like to do, surfing, I hope.
AJ, thank you so much for having me. I'm so stoked to be here. My name's Colbi King Pickett. I'm going to be one of those people that I swear I'd never be. I don't want to drop my original last name. I just got married in April. I'm 26 years old, and full-time I get to work for Jacksonville Radio. We're a cluster of 7 local radio stations where I host a morning show and I get to voice and produce commercials. Essentially, I just say I get paid to talk. And then I recently just joined staff with Christian Surfers United States as their East Coast Girls Regional Coordinator, which has just been so great. Just frothing over that. We can definitely talk more about that later on. And to answer just like briefly your question of what I like to do, obviously surfing. I mean, that's a huge part of most of our hearts. So surfing for sure. I originally grew up on the Panhandle. It's just this really small, podunk, redneck town. It's literally the best hometown in the world, and it's called Wakulla. But I say we breed oysters and football players because that's it. Like, there's no reason you wouldn't even know what Wakulla is. So I grew up just hunting and fishing and mud bogging.
Full tomboy kind of.
All
Love
the time.
it.
And I have 3 brothers, so, you know, just constantly trying to keep up with the boys. And then I moved to Jacksonville on the Atlantic for college and was just blessed with this killer roommate that rips. Like, she did all the local comms, she's sponsored, she represented America in Australia for lifeguard competitions. So just kind of the essence of who I think a lot of chicks want to be. And she taught me how to surf and just totally poured into me. So I love surfing, but you know, like, can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl. So I definitely still like love shooting skeet and duck hunting and fishing and all that.
What's duck cutting?
Oh my gosh, you're so cute, AJ. Duck hunting.
Oh, duck hunting. I was like, what's duck? Oh, duck hunting. Okay, that makes more sense. No, I grew up like in a small town in Cheddar of England, so duck hunting wasn't our thing. We bred cheese.
Oh, that's so sweet. I was named after cheese.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Have you heard of Colby Jack cheese?
No.
So I guess it's just an American thing. But my mom super loves cheese, and she thought I was going to be a boy, so she decided she was going to name me Colby after the cheese, and I'm a girl, so she still named me Colby.
So yeah, you're part of Christian Surfers. I think that is so cool. And I was wondering, like, being on a radio station, do you have the opportunity to share your faith, or is that something that's kind of set aside within your CS world? Like, how do you merge those two things and find a balance between the two?
AJ, that's such a good question. I feel like to like really answer that, I'm going to go back a little bit. So in 6th grade, I did not have a date to the school dance. I was just a weird kid. I still am, but I was really stinking weird. And since I didn't have a date, I was super insecure about that. And I asked if I could MC the dance. And this was just one of those weird charter schools, just all of us were weird. So I remember I was on stage and I introed a song. So like told all my buddies what song was coming up. And then I told everybody where the snacks were. And I remember getting off the stage, going home from the school dance, and telling my mom and dad, man, I want to talk into a microphone. Like, that's somebody's job. And so thankfully I come from a super supportive and just super encouraging family that they just gave me a platform and let me spring off of it. And so I did a ton of sports announcing, and I like commentated all of our games in the local high school. And I did morning announcements and everything. And like I had mentioned before, I'm from a really small town. And so with that, there's only one high school in the county. And it's kind of like Friday Night Lights, where the whole town shuts down for football. And I was announcing the game, and we'd won, and I'd left the field, and I got in my car, and I remember thinking, man, my words don't matter. Like, all the plays I called, all the jokes I made, talking about the concessions, like, none of that mattered. The game's over. And I mean, it's only the Lord, right, that I was thinking all of these things, and He'd put this desire in my heart at such a young age. And I remember thinking, man, I want to talk about something that matters. And what matters more than our salvation? Yeah. And so in that moment, I was like, I want to go in a radio ministry. And so I'm super grateful that I host a morning show on a contemporary Christian station.
Wow, I didn't know that. That is so cool.
Which is such a blessing. I mean, we play Christian music, and then we joke around, and kind of our platform is we want it to be safe and fun for the whole family. We don't want to say something on there and you want to turn the dial to another station because your kid's in the back seat thinking, Mom, what does that mean? But we want to be real, and we want to be transparent. And the main thing about radio is, like, people are sick of being talked at. They want to be talked to. And with that, I don't think I would be able to talk to somebody if I wasn't expressing my faith, and I wasn't expressing my heart and that real vulnerable side of me. So yeah, I'm so grateful that when I go on air, people know what they're listening to, and they know that Jesus is going to come up in the conversation. It's not forced, but it's really natural, and
that's great.
Just like our regular lives. Mm-hmm.
Love it. So obviously you have like this sense of like you love the Lord, and you know that's kind of where your heart's at. I was wondering if that's something that you were brought up with as a child, or did you discover it somewhere else? Like, how was that growing up? Was it a family thing, or what was your experience?
Yeah, I was trying to think of how I want to word it. So my grandparents are first generation from Greece, and in Europe, especially Greece, it's Catholic, like Greek Orthodox. And so we were raised Greek Orthodox just to honor my grandparents. And with that comes the whole, you're baptized as soon as you're an infant, you're sprinkled, all the good stuff. And I definitely was brought up in a Christian home. Like, my mom and dad just love the Lord so much. But I remember when I was 5, I told my Mom, I want to get baptized. And she had explained that, hey, you've already been baptized, you don't need to do that again. And I said, that was your decision, this is my decision, and I feel like I'm ready to get baptized. Like, wow. I remember how I was sitting and everything. So if people are easily offended in their faith, I would stop listening right now. But I was baptized, and I went to my grandparents' house, and I was playing with my brothers, and I got my mom, and I said, Mom, these words keep coming out of my mouth, and I don't know what they mean. And I thought I was in trouble. I didn't know what was happening, and my mom explained a prayer language. And so that was kind of like the gateway. Like I said, I was 5, and
you're so young. That's incredible.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you make that up when you're a kid, you know? But obviously I was 5. I didn't even know what real issues were. Yeah. But I look back, and it's like, man, the Lord always had a mark on my life. Yeah.
And just knowing that is so significant for someone growing up. Like, knowing that like, okay, I have a purpose, like, I have something that I'm meant to do, that's incredible. And that your family also, like, were around you and helped you pursue that. It's a beautiful story. And now you get to be a role model for young girls and boys who attend CS on the East Coast. And I heard that most recently you went on a beautiful, maybe not so beautiful, trip to Nicaragua.
Yeah, man, this was such a privilege to be able to do. It was the first all-girls United States surf and serve. And I got to co-lead it with Amy. Her and her husband are the national directors for Christian Surfers United States. And I just joined staff with CS like 2 months in, and they said, hey, Colby, we want you to lead an all-girls trip. And I did not grow up traveling. Yeah. Like, we had a house in the country, and we had a beach house, and we had lots of toys and boats and stuff like that. So my parents always said, like, hey, our vacation is going to the beach or going fishing. And so here I am, not very educated in the traveling realm. I said, okay, cool, let's do it. And Amy and I just began to pray, and the Lord definitely laid Nicaragua on both of our hearts. And we decided we were going to bring 16 other girls, 8 girls from the East Coast and 8 girls from the West Coast. And the heart and the premise behind that trip was, yes, to serve the women of Nicaragua, where we focused on purity was kind of our theme for the week. So purity and our body, like just honestly how to eat healthy. And then purity in our mind. They're just, these Nicaraguan women are just beat down with this alpha male culture. So giving them a sense of self-confidence, which ultimately only comes from the Lord. So purity in spirit as well, just obviously bringing Jesus into the mix of things. And man, everything that could go wrong on a surf trip went wrong. I mean, we were put on the wrong flights. Though some of us, myself included, didn't get our boards until 3 days into the trip. AJ, I was like surfing Lance's left, my leash broke, like just this whole mess. The last day, 5 of the girls got COVID. Like, it was just gnarly. But man, it was probably one of the best trips of my life. Like, when you're in an environment where everything's going wrong, you can only lean on the Lord. And I think not just myself, but these other girls, because it was ages around 17 to 59, they saw our dependence as leaders, Amy and I, on the Lord, and they couldn't help but follow and tag along in that. It was, I say it was gnarly, and it was, but the surf was sick. It was so good. The weather was amazing. The fellowship was so sweet, just to hang out with these girls from all over the country, and have 2 things in common, Jesus and surfing. And maybe we were more into Jesus than surfing, and maybe some of us were more into surfing than Jesus. But just to be able to do that trip with all females, that created this atmosphere of vulnerability and rawness. There's
crazy, like how just those 2 aspects, like Jesus and surfing, can bring so much to the table. And like, it's such a simple like connection, but yeah, it's like people can talk about surfing for like way too long.
Oh my gosh, I know.
And yeah,
stop talking about it.
It's great that like you have the opportunity to connect the 2 with those girls. Now, I was wondering, you know, having your theme be purity in body, mind, and spirit, right? Was that a topic that was sourced through Amy, or is that something that you felt like personally you wanted to share that with the girls? Like, how did that come about? Because it's a really interesting topic that I've never talked about with like a female leader or anyone really.
Yeah, that's a really good question, AJ. So initially it was the topic, the people that we were staying with, JJ and Eileen, they had mentioned that purity was a huge issue they were trying to combat in the Nicaraguan women community. And it's not really something I had ever struggled with. However, there was a ton of girls on our crew that had struggled with it. And I think you come to this country and the locals see you as these perfect Americans. Wow, these women never struggle with body issues. These women never struggle with sexual immorality or adultery or anything like this. And for us to come not just to their level, but be so raw and vulnerable, I think that spoke more volumes than us coming and acting perfect. And it was so special. Some of the girls, they had shared that they were sexually abused, and that's the exact same thing that these Nicaraguan women had gone through. Some of these girls talked about how they had body image issues that resulted in being bulimic or anorexic, and that's some of the same issues that these Nicaraguan women were dealing with. And so it was an issue that our host saw a need for, and it was amazing how the girls that came on the trip from the United States were able to not just meet that need, but really exceed it by being vulnerable. We didn't ask them to do that. So it was so cool how the Lord never works one-sided, and specifically in that he didn't at all.
So in the beginning of our interview, you kind of mentioned how you had like this outpour of the Holy Spirit basically at like the age of 5. And now you're ministering to young girls. How do you feel like those two merged when you were a teenager? Like, did that kind of continue throughout your childhood, or were there some difficulties in those teenage years? Like, could you relate in any way to the girls who were on your trip?
That's a really good question. I'd say it helped that the Lord had called me at such a young age, because like obviously I knew God was real, I knew he loved me, and I knew he set me apart. However, when I was graduating high school, my parents announced that they were getting a divorce. So all of a sudden I leave for college, and when I come home for college, it's not really home anymore. I'm going to mom's house, or I'm going to dad's house, and through all of that, everybody copes differently, and I coped by just drugs and partying and alcohol and boys, just all that stuff. And I knew the Lord, I loved the Lord, and I knew the Lord knew me and loved me, but I was just so caught up in all this frustration and all of these emotions that that's just how I coped. But I so desperately wished I had somebody that was cool, that loved the Lord, loved the beach, loved surfing, and didn't love alcohol and didn't love drugs. And so I was able to just get out of that whole mess, and the Lord redeems everything. And so I definitely related to these girls that were on the Nicaragua trip. And they remind me of 18, 19, 20-year-old Colby, the Colby that I want to help now.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. I even got to hear just from a couple girls that have met you in the last couple days, and you know that you really speak into their life, and I love that. Well, thank you so much, Colby, for being here. I loved having you on the podcast. It was so cool to hear your life and how you share within your community and how you serve and surf. It was really cool. Thank you.
Man, AJ, thank you so much for having me. What a privilege.
And I can't wait to chat some more sometime soon, maybe.